Welcome, good evening and welcome to the launch of Janet Hatherley's new collection, What Rita Tells Me. Welcome especially to Katherine Gallagher and Lisa Kelly, Janet's two guest readers, who will also be reading this evening. Janet will read 3 sets from her book and other poems perhaps, alternating with Katherine and Lisa's readings. We first met Janet a few years ago when we were frequent visitors to the Torriano in Kentish Town. We used to go to the Sunday evening poetry meetings before the pandemic stopped us travelling in to London. We were very pleased when Janet sent us her finished collection, What Rita Tells Me. Janet is an active member of the North London poetry scene, and she's had poems published in several respected journals in print and online. She's been commended and placed in competitions, both for individual poems and for pamphlets. What Rita Tells Me is both a personal memoir of growing up in the mid-20th century and a social document that touches upon the memories of her father, who was in the army in both world wars. But that's enough from me. Here is Janet to introduce her book and read some of the poems. Janet.
Thank you. It's great to have my book, What Rita Tells Me, published, and many thanks to Janice and Dempsey Windle, and thank you to everybody for coming. My dad was born in 1897, and he fought in both world wars. These poems are about things that happened in my childhood. This first one is on a day trip from London. The tide comes in quick, takes people unawares. A surge sweeps the ramp, catches 3 deck chairs, flattens them with a rush, washes them out to sea. Dad, brave, wades in, rescues each one, drags it from the waves. I'm scared as he loses his footing. He'll be gone, washed away by the sea, as people look on. My dad was 28 years older than my mum. Picking up judgment. Is that your grandfather? It's a summer fair at Sheenmount School, and I am 5. Mum hands in the Victoria sponge we made together. I lick the spoon. It's the 3rd teacher who's asked me, and I am puzzled. I look at Dad with new eyes, seeing he is old. No longer so happy for him to pick me up from school. I liked butter and remember when we had to start using margarine because it was cheaper. Life without butter. Dad leaves the army, takes a lump sum, invests it and loses everything, becomes a sales manager in a costume jewellery firm. He'll get a pension when he retires, shakes hands on a gentleman's agreement. At 64, Dad's replaced by a younger man. Mum says the people he worked with weren't gentlemen. We live on his state pension, £12 a week. Mum builds a wooden sandpit in the garden, 4 foot square, takes in 7 children. My sister makes 8. She spreads stalk margarine on our toast, runs a morning nursery in the sitting room, sets out paints and plasticine, the puzzle she cut out with a jigsaw. It's a double-page picture from a comic, a world inhabited by children who drive pedal cars and go-karts, stop at the zebra crossing for the child with a pram. The only adult is a policeman. He stands in the middle, directs the traffic. 1 or 2 interesting facts about Dad. My dad fought in both world wars, being just old enough for the first and just young enough for the second. He had shrapnel in his right ear. Doesn't always hear me when I ask, "What did you do in the wars, Dad?" I didn't know much about Dad's early life until recently when I sent off his military records, and I found out about his time in the Indian Army in the First World War. and also that in 1919 he was working at a Turk and Arab prisoner of war camp in India. I did some research and found the International Red Cross report on the camp. So I'm going to read 3 short parts of this poem. The camp at Sumapur, Rajputana. It's on a large plain, the Jawai River running through in the monsoons, drying up in the heat, leopards, bears and hyenas in the rocky hills. A barbed wire fence surrounds a huge quadrangle with huts in parallel rows, a small town with wide streets, lighting, water, drainage, a market and post office. A strange town, no women and children to be seen. Only men seated under the verandas around each hut, playing backgammon, dominoes and dice, drinking cup after cup of Turkish coffee. This is an extract from the Red Cross report. At Sunday morning parade, we noticed military tunics, civilian waistcoats, smocks, long cotton robes, Turkish frock coats, fezzes, turbans, caps, slouch hats, embroidered skull caps. The footwear preferred by prisoners is the Eastern slipper. Every prisoner has a small tin identity disc, but it need not be worn on the clothes. Most of the prisoners carry it in a pocket. In 1920, Dad takes part in the repatriation of 6,728 prisoners by train from Eninpura station to Karachi, a 2,000-kilometre trip where ships wait to sail for Basra, the first leg on a long journey home. I loved our house in East Sheen, Richmond. The landlady dies. We're being kicked out next month. Mum says she can't find a house. Dad's got to go into a bedsit. My mum and us 3 kids go into a hostel, sleep all together, share a kitchen and bathroom with lots of other families. Then Mum sees an ad in the Evening Standard, a new council estate being built on an airfield in Yorkshire. Dad can't work, can't walk far. Mum wants to move to the country. Finds Thornaby on the map, writes a letter, asks for a house. We do a moonlight flit. This is about the time I had to look after my baby brother. The Children Who Lived in the Barn is a book by Eleanor Graham. The children who lived in the barn managed very well by themselves when their parents disappeared. It's my favourite book. My mum's gone too. She's in hospital. I'm 10 years old, in charge of the baby. I have a list: feeding times, nappy change, bath time, bedtime, Mrs. Mockler's address and when to visit her. Dad has his list too, in charge of everything else: food on the table, making sure my brother and sister get dressed, helping me. I carry Michael upstairs, Dad's not able to, fill the baby bath with warm water, check it with my elbow like Mum does. Dad puts the potatoes on, the greens in the steamer, the Fray Bentos steak and kidney pie in the oven, comes up to the bathroom, watches as I lift the baby out, wrap him in a towel. Downstairs, he warms the bottle in the saucepan. I feed Michael, lay him carefully in his carry cot. He cries and doesn't stop. How long do I leave him? I check Mum's note, pick him up, rub his back like she does. Round and round the bedroom, rockabye baby on the treetop. What now? Wish I could ask Mum. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. It's dark outside, no one about, no phone box nearby. I'm up twice in the night. Next morning, I put Michael in his pram, wheel him down the road to Mrs. Mockler. She's young, has dyed blonde hair cut short and false teeth, tells me not to worry, all babies cry. She takes the dirty nappies, soaks them in a bucket, sterilizes the glass bottles and rubber teats, watches me feed him, says, "You're doing great." I feel grown up. It seems that Mum's away forever. Then she's home and everything's back to normal. I hand Michael to her, strap on my roller skates, call for Rita. Coming out to play? Back to being a big sister. Don't think I want to live in a barn, after all. Rita was my best friend. What Rita tells me as we walk across the waste ground, weeds growing wild around the airfield, bare concrete runways disappearing into the distance. See these? She points to purple, greenish, bean-like things. They're mousetraps. Men planted them. Be careful, they'll catch your legs. We're in sandals. I imagine a soft brown harvest mouse, trapped and bleeding. From then on, I'm scared of the pods whipping at our ankles as we run. Even after I find out Rita made it up. On our new estate, they hadn't yet built the houses, the shops, sorry. We got our food from the mace van and from Mum's allotment. Dreaming of Leeds. Dad waves as we cycle away. On our estate, no one asks his age, and we've never heard of Parkinson's. Up on the allotment, the air is clean and cold. I watch the brown water of the Tees snake its way below. Mum takes her spade, shovels manure, pulls up weeds, cuts lettuce, spring greens, half a dozen sticks of rhubarb. I put them in my bicycle basket, stand on the pedals, push hard against the wind on the long way home. The mace van's outside. Dad's buying a bag of sugar. He holds the bar, climbs down the step, doesn't see us. Perhaps he dreams of Leeds, where he grew up, 64 miles away, cut off like the moon. We were all waiting for the results of the 11 plus, waiting for a large white envelope. I jump off my bike at Valerie's house, knock on the door. Her curtains are closed. She isn't up yet. I peer through the letterbox, see her small brown envelope on the mat, like the one I found on mine. I know before her, she's failed the 11 plus. We moved to Sussex, arrived in the dark in the middle of a storm. Sidings. 6 weeks into my first year at secondary school, we moved down south. In high excitement, we arrive in the dark of an October storm. Somewhere out there, the sea thunders. For a while, until I start school in 2 weeks' time, I will forget that I miss my friends. I am the oldest of 4, share the top bedroom with my sister. In daylight, the wide windows will have a panoramic view of the sea. I will stay in this bedroom until I'm 13, when I will prefer my own space, the box room downstairs. I won't mind that there is no view. In the morning, we unpack our wellies, rush out through the back door. The garden's flooded. Waves crash on the seawall, spray hurls high into the air. I take a photograph, black and white. We jump up and down, hope for the sea to surround the house, make us an island. This is Sidings. We are living in the middle part of the house. Built into each side are 2 railway carriages. This adds to the adventure, and in the beginning, we will play often in these. Our rent is cheap because Mum will clean the railway carriages for holidaymakers. Sandhoppers come up through the floorboards, leap onto the sitting room carpet. Mum tries to sweep them out. We paddle in the garden, rescue earthworms from the seawater, pale, pink and soft, but still faintly wriggling, put them on dry land. Mostly they will die. Here, the people around us were better off. Red felt tip. Being the only one in my class who has free school dinners, my name called out separately on the dinner register, the ticket I have in my hand to give to the dinner lady in the dinner queue is different from the others. It has a red line drawn through it. And this is my last poem in this section. I had some riding lessons, but I didn't know at the time that my dad had once ridden. I can see him riding like the wind. I'm off for riding lessons down the lane, always slightly nervous of the pony. Cling on tight when cantering, it's scary. Slow into a gentle trot again. Bye, Dad. He's waving from the door, turns away, loses balance, shifts each foot the barest motion, right then left. Gravity is beckoning to the floor. 50 years streak by and they unfold a photo fading from the First World War. Dad in riding boots and jodhpurs, Army Corps. A teenage horseman flying in the field. I'm riding with him, follow in his trace. I can feel the wind against his face. Thank you.
Thank you. That was lovely, Janet. Thank you very much. When I read these poems, I have such respect for your mother. She was an amazing woman, what she dealt with and how well she dealt with it. And your poor dad, your poor dad. Thank you very much. That was a lovely reading.
Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Katherine Gallagher. Katherine is an Australian-born North London poet. Her sixth full collection, which is called Acres of Light, was published by ARC Publications in 2016. And Alison Brackenbury has called it a joyful rising, rinsing of the senses. Rising, I think that should say. And before that, she published Carnival Edge, New and Selected Poems in 2010 with ARC again. Carol Rumans chose her poem, The Year of the Tree, for the Guardian's Poem of the Week. And Katherine has a website at katherinegallagher.com. So, Katherine, could we hear from you, please? Katherine, I think you need to unmute.
Can you?
I think she tried. No, yeah, I just tried her.
No. Is there something?
There you
That's
are.
it.
You're
Now
on.
I am.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you. Yeah, it's a great honor to be reading at Janet's launch. And I love the book, What Rita Tells Us. And it's lively and lovely and an excellent portrait of childhood. And I wanted to start with the childhood poem because I grew up on a farm in central Victoria, Australia. And my poem is about getting the electricity on. The first 15 years of my life, I read by lamplight or gas lamp. So, you know, I sort of think we're coming full circle with the problems about electricity. Anyway, getting the electricity on. The farm has changed, facelifted, since we put away the lamps or hung them up with lanterns as antiques. The house is new-veined, lush, getting the current switch through. Such fever, a district due to celebrate, will be like the townsfolk now, we said. My mother saw the world transformed by a washing machine and fridge. My father caught by progress in a skein that swept about his ears, tracked voyagers around the farm, reassured by the sameness of the stars and lanterns lighting his mind. It's my romantic father who couldn't bear to part with his team of horses. Mind you, he did eventually. And I now wanted to do a poem, sort of jump to 1970 when I was visiting Stockholm for the first time. And this is The White Boat. It's a poem after a children's Save Our Environment exhibition. The White Boat. The child's world is born on a white boat, but these children have fixed on dead birds and dead suns, a papier-mâché baby wailing, and paper trees littered with old cartons, cigarette packs. Everything documented without magic or mercy. Their multiple voice drilling. It spits in your eye, an anti-revolution, dropping warnings over plugged up rivers, as a frilly lady smiles papery out of the crumpled span of her hat, and the last white boat sticks on a black canal. Bit doomful, but I thought we can have a bit of doom. This one is, next poem is The Lesson, and it's about learning to ride a bike. And well, I must say I was 11 by the time I got there. And but actually I used to like walking to school because we'd observe the trees and we had 1.5 miles to walk, and I was with the walkers. Okay, The Lesson. Round and round we circled, his hand steadying my bike, interrupted by cockerel crows and a cow bellowing for her calf. He was 45, I 11. We'd done so many circuits, I knew the ground by heart. Every rut and puddle, every tuft of grass. Balance, it's all to do with balance, he yelled, stopping to catch his breath. We'd practiced now for days. I worried he'd give up, leave me to battle on alone, but we rattled on. At 45, he puffed a bit. Would I wear him to the ground? Get your bloody balance right. Maybe I should let you go. Dad, don't, I screamed. Please don't, Dad. Okay, but go easy. Remember, it's up to you. This is worse than hell, I thought. Then, as if by magic, just on dusk, I glided forward, swaying right to left, moved away from him. Slowly, my girl, he shouted, catching up, steadying my wobbles again. I couldn't see his face, but I knew that he was smiling. I never saw my mother ride a bike. I think it wasn't her thing, but she could ride a horse, which I think is good. You can ride a horse, it's not too bad. Now, I'd been teaching for 5 years, and then I decided I wanted to, I had an unhappy love affair, and there's nothing like distance for getting rid of that problem. And so I came to, my friends all said, well, go to London, and that's the gateway to Europe, etc. So this poem is called The Uses of Snow. And this was the first time I really saw a lot of snow in, it was at New Year's Eve, and this is well back at 69. The use, pardon me, I'll have a mouthful. The uses of snow. 2 a.m. in a taxi. Suddenly, the city's a flaring continent, white, delivering sights from an exotic film set. Westminster, Big Ben, the Victoria Memorial. She's some character in her element. Flakes shoring together, heavier by the minute. To the right, Hyde Park's ice fields, hinterlands invaded, whiting its stamp on a different Christmas. Returning home to North, she reminds herself. as flurries clog the windscreen. So little happens just by accident. Her change of countries and the aloneness she's grown into. Away not a year yet, missing her family as they're missing her. This is 1969. There'll be many more years away, a hemisphere's width of markers. Choose your year, find a life. Never in years will it be against a backdrop of such eerie whiteness as this. London remade, bleached clean, proclaiming softly how to start again. Well, but yeah, there we go. Just a couple more. I want to do a couple of poems. I know one poem about journeys in railway fields, which is a place, a nature reserve, which I'm sure many of you know. It's a wonderful place where I did a lot of workshops for children. Journeys in railway fields. We craned our necks, waited for the swans. So many feathers on the bank where they'd nested. This time they had two cygnets, fluffy grey. They were an omen, mythic lovers haunting. We hoped they'd return here annually, claiming the river, its water lilies, willow herb, ash and cherry, grown wilder with each passing year. And the final one, I'm going to have my time. It's about my aunt and uncle back in Australia. I thought I'd go back to Eastville because my uncle had a joke about it being the hub of the universe. And of course, nothing could have been further from the truth. Now, this is Margaret, my Aunt Margaret, who courted him. And he was, long-term bachelor, but she was, what he needed. Katherine, it's me, the writer. Okay, Margaret dancing. When Margaret penned her proposal to Eastville's most eligible bachelor, Farmer Tommy Bob Esquire, the district knew the season had started fortuitously. Margaret brought flowers and light to his dry patch of terrain, marked out the farm into airy spaces, weaving around stumps of ringbark trees. And she and Tom, virginal, 50-ish, danced like young things, throwing off their years in moon-spurred reels and bagpipe skirls, as Piper Alex, kilted and medallioned, brought the banks of Loch Lomond to the lowlands of Eastville, giving a nod to promises and lift-off for all who loved and danced and loved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katherine. That was lovely. Memories of Australia and eligible bachelors. Lovely.
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
they tied the knot.
Good. And now we're going to hear from Janet again. Janet, would you like to unmute and read us some more poems?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Katherine, that was lovely. In this section, I'm going to read 5 poems that aren't in the book. Things are much worse now for families, having to use food banks, skip meals. In the 60s, we were on social security, which did give us some security, and we always had just enough to eat. Worse than the 60s. Back in the 60s, when times were hard and we had no money, Mum went to sign on. Didn't get much, it was social security, liver, mashed potatoes, spring greens for 6. We were never full, but we didn't go hungry. Our clothes were secondhand, but they kept us warm. They were bought too big, but they kept us warm on the way to school when the frost was hard. We had small portions, but we didn't go hungry. Queuing at the jumble sale, trying things on, afraid bentos pie and spring greens for 6. Trousers too short, Mum let down hems securely, keeping us together. She was our security. A drink of milk, fried egg on toast for 6. No money for extras, and that was hard. Outgrowing shoes and waiting for new ones. sea spinach from the garden. We didn't go hungry. 50 years pass, Lucy's family, they're hungry. 5 minutes late and benefits cut, no surety. 6 weeks wait, the fridge is empty, time drags on. The meter's run out, her baby's not warm. She can't find a job, has looked so hard. They're sharing one bed, she gets up at 6, wipes her tears in the dark at 6:10. From school to the food bank, today they're not hungry. She's handed a Fray Bentos pie. This is hard. Wanted the best for her children, security. At least in the classroom they're keeping warm. Lucy's wrapped in the duvet and her coat's still on. No internet access, how can she get on? Needs to fill in a form, pages 1 to 6. Her baby is crying, he doesn't feel warm. She opens a tin of creamed rice, she's so hungry. Lost her job at the cafe, it was insecure. Where's the way out? Can't see it, it's hard. Hard to answer. Mum, I'm hungry. Insecure in the dark at 6:30. Warms her hands on the kettle, the clock ticks on. A food bank is a new thing. It's not a place that anyone would want to have to go to. This poem is a Gazelle, which is an ancient Persian form. Gazelle, at the food bank door. I open the padlock, remove the chain, at the food bank door. Sweep up sugar, walk over stains, at the food bank door. The rain is steady, the queue is long. Cherry wheels her buggy, face wet with tears, here again, at the food bank door. Joe's walked for miles, save the bus fare, rich tea or hobnobs. Pale, thin, he feels the strain at the food bank door. Sandra's elderly, paid her rent, no money for food, her flat is cold. Out of breath, she leans on her cane at the food bank door. Carol shows photos of his dog. She's someone to live for, takes pet food vouchers, sets off again from the food bank door. Alicia's glowing, pregnant, 38 weeks, no nappies, nothing. Her fridge is empty, a waiting game at the food bank door. Her son's young, not eaten for days. I give him a Kit Kat, water, a chair, tinned ham, hungry and faint at the food bank door. Leslie's 70, never worked. Go online, look for a job, they said. Live most her life in hospital, freeing, at the food bank door. Patrick's a plasterer, takes Asda cornflakes. Worked since I was 15. Hopes no one will see him leaning against the food bank door. Afra's children wait with her. Any sanitary towels? No, sorry. Benefits cut 6 weeks ago. It's unexplained. At the food bank door. Ben's homeless. No kettle, saucepan, plate or fork, tin opener. I look for ring-pulled cans. It's inhumane, the food bank door. Charlotte's left her job, a scientist, to care for her young daughter, sickle cell crisis. Spaghetti hoops, more pain at the food bank door. Pete's sick, disabled, lost his DLA. We've ticked the boxes, fit for work, they said. You're to blame, at the food bank door. I, Jan, collect in red forms, the colour of anger, give out tins. Who'll stop this refrain at the food bank door? Also, in the 60s, you rarely saw homeless people and no young homeless people. This poem is at Finsbury Park. The mattress. Sometimes they sleep in, though the daylight is broad. Two young people on a single mattress under the bridge, the quilt up to their chins, still as dolls, heads touching, black hair intertwined. Sometimes the bed is empty, quilt pulled back, and they are gone. Pigeons on the girders, orange-eyed, nod and coo, a fluttering of feathers. A bus breaks, each passenger absorbed in their own music. People's feet splash by through puddles. They glance down at a bed in the open, scuffed, dirty, damp, as they emerge from the bridge to catch their connection. This is another poem about under the bridge at Finsbury Park. Now there's no one there, they've all been moved on. The Untitled. If I sat in the dark at Finsbury Park, under the bridge by the cycle track, under the light where it shines neon green, on the grey slabs where they glisten with wet, and huddle so still on a stone cold night, my fingers would freeze, my toes turn white. The blood would leave me, my body drain white, if I sat outside at Finsbury Park through just 1 hour of a freezing night. My eyes fixed slow on the cycle track, water dripping down from the railway, wet drops reflecting neon in the glaring green. She sits quite still in a pool of green. Her face is shadowed, white on white. Puffer is glistening, droplets wet. People hurry past off to Finsbury Park, keep their eyes down on a single track, tubes to catch on a bustling night. No place of safety on a lonely night, ran away from home, got the tube at Wood Green. Mum out working, her stepdad keeps track on her back, on her case, face white with rage. Stayed at a friend in Finsbury Park for a week, then another, the weather turned wet. How is this happening? Her face is wet. Her eyes are wide open in the scuffle of night. She stares from ground level at Finsbury Park. People glance down in a glare of green, embarrassed by the girl, eyes dark, face white, keep an eye out for bikes on the cycle track. Think they'll get to shelter, take that track. Hurry off home to get out of the wet, rub their hands, stop fingers turning white, warm them on the radiator, home at night, in a flat on a mews in Islington Green. Forget her, the girl at Finsbury Park. And those awake in the park at night, green grass turned black in the shivering wet, feel their fingers turn white by the railway track. And my last poem in this section is one I've written recently. It's a form called a duplex by Jericho Brown, which where lines are repeated. Layers. The shadow of the pencil in my hand is a crow. It disappears when I write in many layers. My writing has many layers, I understand. I write to understand bare feelings. Bare feelings are hard to articulate. The world is very good at articulating. The world is very good at drowning. I like the gentle buzz of an uncrowded cafe. I like the easy buzz of an uncrowded life. Crowds are a river and can be deafening. Rivers that aren't deafening can be paddled in. I listen to the sea shush shush around my feet. The sea eases my feet into the sand. The shadow of the pencil in my hand is a crow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. That was a lovely set of poems. That last one is, that's a very interesting form as well. Gazelles, I think, would sound wonderful if they were sung as well. I think it must be a song, originally a song form, like a Nell is. But that last poem, I've never heard of that form before. It's very good. Thank you. So we're going to go now to Lisa. Lisa Kelly is here, and Lisa's first collection, which is called A Map Towards Fluency, was published by Carcanet in 2019 and shortlisted for for the 2021 Michael Murphy Memorial Prize. Her most recent pamphlet, which is called From the IKEA Back Catalogue, is published by New Walk Editions. She is the co-editor of an anthology of poetry and short fiction, What Meets the Eye, which is written by deaf and hard of hearing writers in the UK. And she's co-editor of Magma Poetry. So Lisa, please unmute and let's hear your poem, please.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Janet, for inviting me to read at the launch of your wonderful pamphlet. I think what Rita tells us is what I love about it, and Janice has mentioned so many things that I agree with, is your social documentation and the spirit of your mother, and just the beautiful detail that you bring all the characters in your family to life, and it's totally engrossing and delicious. And I've tried to pick. I'm going to read 3 poems that I hope sort of tangential themes to your collection. Because one of the things I love about your book is the moves that have gone on in your life as a child. I mean, I think they make such an impact when you're young. But a lot of the moves were through necessity. I love the midnight flit, and the way you were allowed to explore as well, and how you coped with all those very dramatic moves when you're young. Moving is, I find, very dramatic anyway, isn't it? So I've written a poem. It's quite a recent one that deals with moving, but from a different angle, and it's based on a film by Fellini called, excuse my Italian accent, but I Vitelloni, and it means the overgrown calves. And it's about a group of young men, 5 of them, who are living in a small town and have dreams about escaping. But what I found fascinating was that Fellini, who grew up in Rimini, and it was really based on his early life, he chose to film in Rome because he said he could make Rome more like Rimini. And he then went on, it was one of his first films to do films that are much more surreal. But I watched it and the other day, and this is my response, sort of looking at their dreams and why they want to move, and only one of them actually manages to make it out. I Vitelloni. What do you remember of the film where Rome stood in for Rimini, was more Rimini than Rome? What do you take away from this classic? Because you know it was formative, are looking for indications of incipient genius. What happens, asks the armchair critic of yourself, just to test memory? Not much, you say. The philanderer married Miss Mermaid, lusted after others, but settled down. The poet never got his breakthrough. The narrator escaped by train to his own idea of a future, towards the Rome pretending to be Rimini, didn't know he'd already arrived. The dreamer stayed to look after his mother. There was some character you can't quite recall who might have played pool, probably made a quip or two, part of the gang, but so in the background that Rimini perhaps was enough for him, that the women of Rome, the salons of Rome, the theatres of Rome could never colour character and lure him off his bar stool. But what really happened, beyond plot and place, beyond Rimini or Rome? Well, you say, the poet doodled a triangle and watched his characters as if shadows across a ceiling. The dreamer dragged the carnival's grotesque papier-mâché head by a piece of string. The unfaithful husband stole an angel from a stockroom. And what of the nondescript guy, the one who, in your mind, is so fuzzy? You want to re-watch major scenes, find him singing in the storm, pick him out in the rafters, canoodling with the prettiest girl. Is he just too real to be remembered? like the narrator, whose character is your eyes, who leaves for a Rome, which is Rimini. So my next poem, again picking up on the strong family theme in Janet's book. My mother married, well, 2 husbands. And they were both quite older than her, not as old as Janice's dad, at the age gap, but 13 years with both men, actually. Yeah, as my brother, like you were saying about picking up from school, I remember my brother used to ask my dad to wear a hat because he was bald. It didn't bother me, but there you go. Anyway, so this poem is more from the perspective of looking back at what it must have been like for my older siblings, my brother and my sister, to have a new, a stepdad and have that disruption in their family. Slant of summer. There's a black and white photo of my half siblings stuck in my memory, their legs in wooden stocks. My sister's head is tilted. She is half smiling. The white bow in her hair matches her white dress, although what is white could be pink or powder green in that slant of summer. Our brother, laid back, leans away from the lens. This is his time to dream, fringe falling over one eye, on half-term break from boarding school, where he was force-fed maggots and sat half asleep to warm the toilet seat for a prick of a prefect, and there's a cuteness come cockiness in his eye, which might or might not antagonize the man who will cuckold his father, who may or may not already be part of the picture. And my final poem is about my mother-in-law, who is French and, shall we say, quite old-fashioned in some of her attitudes. She's seen a lot of change in her life. She's got a home in Brittany, and while I was out there one summer, I was having, well, my sort of day job is writing articles for a technology magazine from a business perspective. I mean, don't even ask me to sort of work a photocopier. It's literally, the sort of big picture thinking. And I was interviewing an artificial intelligence expert from IBM, and the contrast and sort of what he had to tell me about what was going to happen with my mother-in-law's views that summer made quite an impression, and this poem was the result. Conversations with a technology evangelist and my belle mare. Walter Riviera is a lovely name for an artificial intelligence technical solutions specialist. As our conversation flows over the phone, I streamline his name to Water River. AI is not black magic, he tells me. It allows hospitals to transfer organs with AI-enabled drones, beating the blocked colon of traffic below. We need not be scared. The world is changing at a pace we cannot keep up with, but humans will always be necessary. Who will put the new AI-enabled drone transported kidney in the patient? What you are saying, Walter, makes sense. Even if deep learning and scalable processes are just words for me to scribble and type up later. They will make sense to others, otherwise, why am I here? An intermediary between old ideas and new, using the landline in my belle mare's farmhouse in Brittany. Once upon a time, this would have been revolutionary. She used to have to go down the road and book a call in a manned booth, and that was revolutionary. But now analog is as old hat as the one on the scarecrow in the field. And my bell mare regrets that no one calls these days, how they would have come to say hello, pay their respects. And she is surprised by how things have changed at a pace she cannot keep up with. Only yesterday morning, Michel Minot came early to remove the hornet's nest in the bergerie, and she is shocked he was dressed in white. He would never have worn white in the past. The son of a sharecropper, yoked to the land, he would have worn blue overalls. But now look at him, she says. He turns up in the morning in a white shirt. Things have changed, she repeats. And he goes on holiday in Corsica. It is a revolution. As if by magic, the hornet's nest disappears. There is no more buzzing through walls, but dead insects are still being found in corners, under covers, papery dry, and thwarted in their attempt to flee through glass. While maybe above the head of my bell mare, an AI-enabled drone is on course, and Walter's words splash. Humans have nothing to fear. Thank you.
Oh, that last one. What a contrast. Thank you very much, Lisa. And now we have a final set of poems from Janet, our wonderful author. So, Janet, would you like to unmute and read for us, please?
Okay. I'm going to read 5 more poems from the book. We made a maze in the sand, dragging an old lawnmower handle, its 2 prongs making a track. Sand maze. We carry an old lawnmower handle, blaze removed, my brothers, sister and me, along the garden path, through clumps of sea spinach, up the slope to the sea wall, jump down, our feet crunching into the shingle. The tide's going out. Pebbles and empty limpet shells tumble in the low waves. We take turns to grip the wooden handle. Walk backwards, watch the metal prongs make a track in the sand. We're tracing a maze, turn and spiral until it stretches further than we can see, breakwater to breakwater. Mum walks past and waves. Her tall figure becomes smaller, a flicker on the distant sea line. Seagulls call and gather to her. She's at her trot line, bending low, rebaiting hooks with whelks. The maze is finished. Now we chase round and round until caught in one of our own dead ends, marked in the sand with a line of seaweed. Mum walks back. It's Bass again for tea. The tide creeps in and our maze is gone. I found some of my dad's letters. Dad went into respite while we went away for a week. On the left of the page is Dad's letter, and on the right is what happens when we're on holiday, and I intersperse the 2. From Dad's letter, 3rd of September, 1969. Care Commandant, Convalescent Home, Officers Association, Percival Terrace, Brighton. Dad goes away while we go on holiday with Mum. A houseboat on the Isle of Wight, steep spiral stairs. No, Dad couldn't have climbed those. Jennifer, darling, I was deeply touched by your loving care and solicitude when you signed me in this morning. Thanks. It sits on its keel, tilts when the tide goes out. My brother Sam and I untie the little wooden boat, take turns to row down the wide creek. At night, dip our oars into the black. I've settled into the place, which has a nice quiet atmosphere, and think I'll enjoy it quite a lot. I lie back, rock to the vastness behind the stars. I am 13, fancy the boy, older. I've met someone I knew in Burma, very friendly and quite a nice contact. It was very sweet of you to phone this evening. I'll certainly phone tomorrow at 8. Who comes down to the shore to fish? Sam pushes the boat off before Caroline can climb out. She's only 8, can't row, panics, cries. I thought about you so intensely that if you hadn't phoned this evening, I'd have rung up to say I loved you. Clings to the side, drifts away. This boy runs up, rows out, tows her back. All my love, darling, Ralph. It is the closest I get to him. There wasn't much to do as a teenager growing up by the sea. This was one of the highlights. Bracklesham Fair. The fair's here. We throw our cigarette stubs over the breakwater, head for the waste ground behind the hairdressers. I hang around with Marion as men hammer in pegs, put up canvas stalls, raise the big wheel, girder by girder. It's opening night. The fair lights up the dark. The muddy field is strewn with golden straw. We put pennies in the penny pusher at just the right moment, wait for the mountains to fall. A ping pong ball in a bowl wins a goldfish if it doesn't bounce back out. Let's go on the waltzer. The boy who works it is good looking, long brown hair. We pull down the bar, grip tight, lurch side to side. Da-do-rom-rom-rom, da-do-rom-rom. He gives our waltzer an extra spin, jumps on, leaps off. I whirl through the air with Marion, who leaves school at 15, works in the mace shop, marries him at 16. By this time, Dad wasn't able to go out much. Before there's medication for Parkinson's. Cycling home with Mum, bags of shopping swinging from our handlebars, we notice a pile of clothes by the side of the road. Stopping to take a closer look, I see it is my dad. Dad's not supposed to go out by himself because if he falls, he's not able to get up. And this is my last poem. Going back years later, the seawall had disappeared under huge mounds of shingle. The end of the breakwater. The cormorant stands on the highest post, airs its wings like a metal angel. Now it folds them, calls across the sea. 50 years and crashing waves have eroded the breakwater's solid wood into stumps, smooth and desolate. They disappear into the bank of shingle piled up by diggers, a better flood defence. Somewhere meters beneath is the sea wall, where Dad sat on a folding chair, tweed cap pulled low, and we climbed down, jumped, feet crunching in the stones, running to the clay beds at low tide to look for fossils, shark teeth, stingray teeth. Our house, with its railway carriages, is gone. Only the sea is the same. Thank you. And many thanks to Katherine and Lisa for their great readings and for supporting me. And thank you very much to everybody for coming. It's great to see everybody.
Yes, we've had a wonderful audience and you've all been so good. You've not unmuted once, unless we asked you to. So would you like to unmute now, and let's give ourselves and everybody who's read a good hand. Yes.